One of the things that I'm trying to dig into with this podcast is when you go on LinkedIn, you're not seeing people posting about their traumatic work events, right? You're not seeing people talk about the boss that gaslit them for 2 years or something like that. And one of the reasons why I think it's fascinating to chat with folks like you or the therapists we've had on the show is because, there is this sort of quiet side of careers that I think a lot of folks go through, but they don't have places to talk about them or feel like other people have gone through those things as well. And it just if you're in a position where you feel like you're the only one experiencing it, which happens a lot with the job search, right? Oh, I'm the only one who's getting ghosted. I'm the only one who's getting whatever it might be. And then you hear someone else's story. It definitely, I don't know, makes it just kind of brings a little light into that gray.
Yeah, I get a lot of messages from people who don't feel safe and comfortable, like you said, to post.
What kind of stuff do you typically hear when you get those?
So I used to write a lot of job seeker oriented posts, and people would write to me and say, your post really spoke to me. I wanted to comment, but my boss monitors my LinkedIn activity.
Yes.
hmm Yeah, they would say things like that. They would say, I'm going through that exact same situation. But yeah, there a lot of people are afraid their employer will see it and they'll get retaliated against. Or, people have their work history. So if they tell a story, they're afraid people will go look and see what company and figure out who they're talking about. And they're just really afraid to put that out there. So the gaslighting, the disrespect that people are shown, the micromanagement, being given a bait and switch, told that they're going to do one thing and the job is completely something else. There's a lot of things that people go through in the workplace that causes them stress. And sometimes it's, a boss that's stealing credit for their ideas. It's an endless list of sins in the workplace.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been trying to work with folks on is how to build themselves up to even that power dynamic a little bit. There's this idea where it's like, I'll say, hey, here's a tool where you can find people's email addresses and email them.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, no, I could never. Or I'll be like, just go look at that person's LinkedIn profile. But that's creepy. I can't look at a
Yeah.
public profile. And meanwhile, a company is like, I need to speak to 4 people that you've worked for. I need to know your background check. I need to,
Mm-hmm.
if you could tell me your shoe size and your social security, it's like all this stuff. And
I'm going to need you to open your mouth and let me look inside. Yeah.
right, yeah, check your teeth, see if you're healthy. And these things are so the power dynamic, I think, is
Yes.
so fascinating. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, I have a contract that I'm looking at right now and I'm looking through it and I'm like, wait, so you own every idea that I had? Like, it literally says ideas. I'm like, ideas? But how can, or words I say? It's like, but then how do I coach in the future? And we're, talking with legal right now. And those are the things that I find, it's the standard contract, right? It's the standard
Mm-hmm.
way that we do business. It's the X, Y, or Z. And I wonder how pervasive it is. I'm not sure if I'm working with people at a certain point, maybe entry level roles are a little bit worse,
Oh,
or
this is huge. This is huge. And I'm so glad you broached this subject because I have a lot of experience with it. So I've always been treated differently in the workplace than my coworkers by the same manager. And it's because I don't take shit from people. Can I say that word?
yes,
Sorry, I
please
probably
dig
shouldn't say
in,
that word.
dig in.
I'm not a big swearer, but this topic really kind of gets
It gets me
me
hot too.
riled up.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So I worked on a team, and there was territorial battles, there was gaslighting, there was stealing credit for ideas. There was a lot of bad business going on. And I looked around and I noticed all of the other functional leads were treated differently than I was. In the interview, I set the stage that I don't do well in micromanagement environments. I will be very open to feedback. I always seek to become an expert in anything that I do. If I'm not doing things to get the results that you need, let's have conversations. But I will get very demotivated if I am micromanaged. I say that, well, when I used to work for people, I would say that in job interviews. When my manager would start micromanaging me, I would say, I don't do well with micromanagement and I'm going to get demotivated very quickly. Let's talk about what your concerns are so that you get the results from me you need. But we need to look at this dynamic between us. I speak to people like they're my equal, even when they're my manager. I don't have this subordinate mentality. When I would find myself in the elevator with the president, I would talk to her like anyone else. And I pitched an idea once and it became a corporate initiative.
Cool.
Yeah. So that is a competency called comfort with higher management. And comfort with higher management, when someone is competent in that, it's an indicator that you are promotable, if you will. When you look at people who are willing to promote you, you have to have comfort with higher management. So going back to that situation with that manager, one of the things that this manager was famous for was giving sort of bogus feedback that wasn't actionable, that wasn't really fair in a lot of situations. But people just sort of sit there silently and take it. And one time I was given some pretty absurd feedback. And I just sat back and I said, that's really interesting feedback. I've never been given that feedback before, but thank you for sharing it with me. Can you tell me what you would like to see me do differently in the future? And because it wasn't actionable, the stammering started and just sort of swiveling in the chair. And I just sat quiet and just maintained eye contact and comfort in the chair. And the sputtering stopped and I heard, well, I don't think that there's anything you need to do differently. And I said, okay. And that was the end of it. So I was never, ever given bogus feedback by that manager again because I wasn't offensive, but I held my power in that situation. And I think that manager knew, okay, if I'm going to give just sort of random feedback in the future, I better be prepared to back it up. So it never came again. Meanwhile, other people on the team were getting this ridiculous feedback. And I'm like, well, why don't you? Or they were given way too much work. And I would say, I'm happy to do that for you. Here are my current projects that I'm working on. Which one of these can I put on hold temporarily to take that for you? And I was told, don't worry about it. I'll give it to someone else. And someone who couldn't say no would take it. So I knew my boundaries. I know when to say no. And people sometimes sort of go into fight, flight, freeze mode when something happens to them. And so they don't say what they wanted to say. They can't calmly address it. So I would say you have to get comfortable, keep yourself out of fight or flight as much as you can when someone's giving you feedback or doing something, and sort of bring yourself to that rational place and sort of distance yourself from your emotions. That takes practice. But in the short term, people will say, I missed my opportunity. You have never missed an opportunity. When you go back to a situation and you're one-on-one the next time, there are 3 words that you can always say to rehash a subject, and that's, I've been thinking. I've been thinking about the conversation that we had in my one-on-one last week with that feedback, or with what you said to me when you told me whatever it was. And then you can say, I'm concerned about the tone of voice you used. I'm concerned about the language that you used. I'm concerned about the dismissing of my ideas. I'm concerned about presenting the idea on my behalf without discussing that with me. What are you concerned about? I'm concerned about because I feel that this is going to negatively affect our working relationship, because I feel that it gave permission to speak to me with that tone. And that's not something that I intended to promote or to sign off on. You can say things in a mature, calm, rational way, but then you end it with an offer of help. How can I help? Whatever. How can I help alleviate your concerns about how I'm spending my time? How can I alleviate your concerns about whatever? and put it back on them to give you the conditions of what they need from you. And it's really difficult to get mad at somebody when you end it with that humility.